All right. Okay. Welcome, everyone. I am so happy to be introducing Michelle Waters. She is a conscious money coach, and I met her as part of the Shakti Leadership Fellowship that I was a part of last year. She was a part of an earlier cohort, and she is quite the financial guru for women. She has a lot of wisdom to share with you based on her personal story that she's going to be sharing tonight as part of this interview. And of course, if something comes up where you have a question concerning anything she's sharing, just type it into the chat and we'll do our best to get to that question. And I'll share that with Michelle. So Michelle, what I'll do is I'm just going to read a little bit about who you are. I already shared a lot about you in the email for those that checked you out. And I know that several of the clients are all excited to see the replay who can't make it live tonight. So I'm going to be sharing just a little bit about Michelle's background. So she is the founder of Conscious Money and also Interchange Consulting and Coaching. She is also the author of The Orange Line, A Woman's Guide to Integrating Career, Family, and Life. She's a co-author with that. And it's really interesting. 118 college-educated women were interviewed for this book, and it was a pioneering study at the time that outlines the limitations of the feminine filter, which is a really fascinating term. And so I think we might get into that, maybe a little bit of about what that means. And it says here that the behavior and agency of women and the need to experience a fulfilling career and personal life was part of this interview. It was during this project that Michelle learned of the financial difficulties and conflicted beliefs many women have concerning money and finance. This prompted her to qualify as a certified money coach. And she even studied at Harvard Law in negotiation skills. And she's part of the board for Peace Through Commerce, along with other amazing things, including a part of the women's advisory for Braid Theory, which you can share about, Michelle, if you would like to. And I love her beautiful mantra and her mission. Her goal is to raise the collective consciousness about financial and feminine filters that limits personal growth and balanced leadership in women. She finds that helping others to discover meaning in life and contribute to their unique and best self is very fabulously rewarding for her. And so I love how she ends this. There is enough, I am enough. And that's such an important part of what I feel us as women have to integrate, that we are already enough. And so, Michelle, I just wanted to hand this over to you so that you can share anything else you would like to share besides what I just shared about you. And also maybe beginning with that research you did on the book, The Orange Line, and what were some of the important things that kind of came up for you that made you begin to look at your personal life and how you were raised and what money was like for you and your family. So I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Linda. It's so lovely to be here, and everybody else, which I don't know, but welcome, and we're going to have a fun time. I'm hoping you will ask some questions and you'll get to know me. So you can probably hear my accent. I'm from Australia, but I've been in the US now 15, 16 years. So I'm quite connected to both countries at this point. So I'm married to an American, and that happened 9 years ago. So the book, yes, I'd done research in Australia for looking at policies within organizations, policies that were about work and family. So a lot of what we're doing now with COVID and all working remotely, I was a real trailblazer in Australia 20, 30 years ago about the fact that women may need to use different policies and practices to be able to manage their work and family, and not just women, but parents. Mm-hmm. And so that won a whole lot of awards. So I already knew about qualitative research. And so when I was over here with my co-authors, and we were together and looking at why aren't women up there? Why aren't they leading? Why aren't they the CEO? What's holding them back? And I'd already been a senior VP, and my other co-author, Jodie, was in the academic area, and Kelly had been an entrepreneur and ran her own business for years, as well as being in the corporate area as a VP. So we were just concerned and volunteers on this other leadership organisation. It was a non-profit. So we decided essentially why don't we ask women? You know, I thought it would be great to do a research study, and because Jodie worked for the University of Boston, we asked 118 women. It was called a snowballing technique. It's very well recognised, and everyone is de-identifiable in the study. And we asked them about, you know, their career and family. And what we learned was some very enlightening things about a belief system and ideals about what would be a woman's ideal, the ideal woman. So these were very entrenched and flawed beliefs, we felt. And we named this the feminine filter. And essentially it's about doing it all, looking good, and being nice. Now, within that are assumptions that underpin that. Because if you're going to do it all in your job and have a family, what we learned was women were making choices about, well, I'll either, you know, stick on the career track, which we called the green line, or I'll drop out and then get on the red line. Well, that's what we call them, bounce around and never really get back into their career, or let's call it their purpose. And in the book, we call it métier, which is really about your vocation. And then we came up with the integrated work-family line, or the inner integration is the orange line. So that book was written, you know, quite a few years ago now, but I kept hearing, I'm just going to read you one woman's, just a little vignette from one interview. And I dug this out today because it was really profound, but she wasn't the only one. It said, then suddenly my husband left me. Traumatic grief, very hard to say goodbye. Several years of trauma. Then I got a brain tumour. Was living one big fear during this time. I was 52 and had never managed money or had a full-time job. She'd worked part-time. She was actually a trained counsellor, a therapist. Very worried about security and how to get through. The family that I had invested my life in had fallen apart. So that particular interview, there was a number of others that triggered me about what I'd learned about money and the story that I'd lived through my growing up. And not so much Jodie and Kelly, that, you know, that they've gone off and done other things, but I thought, you know, how come she's not looked after herself? It was a real puzzle. How come she thought that the guy on the white stallion was going to be there forever? Because life changes. That's my experience. And I'd learned to be very resilient about finances as well as emotionally and spiritually. So we interviewed these women and we came up with this feminine filter, and we came up with something else about guilt. And that another thing that really holds women back is they'll take on the ownership of other people's emotions, and they'll take responsibility for them to make them feel better. And it might be their boss. I witnessed this at one organisation I worked with, you know, he was the head of HR, and he thumped the desk, and the women, it was like a harem. They'd run around and they'd find the file he'd lost. And I remember thinking, this is crazy. The women are doing all the work and he's going higher and higher and, you know, on the executive. And I realised that, you know, it was easy for me to do that in my marriage. I watched my mother do it, and a lot of these were triggered in me, and I realised that I need to know why women are thinking like this, and where did this belief come from, and could we change it? And so that's why I looked at qualifying as a money behavior coach. And I did that course, and it was so enlightening about the patterns, the brain. This is based on neuroeconomics and the whole neurological system. And, you know, we all know about that reptilian brain, which is the fight, flight, or freeze. Well, money, people respond to money in a lot of instances like that, rather than being strategic. And so I thought, you know, when did I learn about the money? You know, why have I taken a different path with things like this? And so, you know, it was really the story of the women that triggered my passion for, you know, want to help if I can, in any way I can, that women don't need to suffer like this. And that, you know, it's about education, obviously, about knowing more about how money works. But it's much more than that. And that is about the psychology of money and the patterns that you have picked up within your family.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was why, and the book's been successful, and that is about, you know, integrating career and family in your career. And skills, you know, that's another conversation, and I can teach the 6 skills that we came up with. But yeah, so that was really why I got into it.
Wow. I feel like a lot of women are feeling some aspect of what you just shared around this feminine filter, and how in some ways we as women have had these filters, but it hasn't been conscious. It sounds like for many of these women that you interviewed, it may not have been even conscious that they were actually, you know, putting these filters on, or they had these filters. It was through the research that it was discovered that this is almost like a programmed thing in women. Did you notice, were women conscious of this, or was it more?
Oh, no. And when you've got 118 interviews and all that data, I mean, you know, they're all different stories. It was a matter of us kind of standing back to look at what was the theme that was running through. And there, you know, it just hit. I remember Jodie and I were walking down the beach saying, you know, what does this all mean? You know, which is, I've been through that before with my other research. And it was like, oh dear, they're looking through a lens, like a common lens that is really holding them back and holding the other women that they know back. In fact, they were really frowning at other women that were doing it differently. I mean, you know, it's really powerful. Often women that had got up in the corporate area were very dark on other women that were, you know, leaving at 5 o'clock to look after the child as well as work. And, you know, we have all these judgments.
Yes.
You know,
yeah.
Judging other people is such a handicap for ourselves, because that's the way we measure ourselves as well. Yes. And so if you're going to judge another woman on her house being neat and tidy and it should look like this, or, you know, the meal should be that, or whatever, you know, it's high expectation on yourself as well. And the other thing in the book is about perfection. You know, none of us are perfect. And if you're going to have you live your métier and live your purpose, well, you know, some of the things are going to go by the wayside. Your house might not be that tidy. and anyway, you've got to learn to delegate. And hopefully you'll get your children to be part of the team, and your husband. The other thing from the book that really came out is that marry well, choose a partner well, because it was the women that were doing it well were a team. It's like, this is our family, these are our finances, how we're going to do it together. And you know, that was really evident. So yeah, so that's the book.
Wow, that is fascinating. So my gosh, there's just so much there, but I really want us to get into how money was seen in your family, because clearly there's a way that you were able to distill this data and see these particular patterns because in some way you had a different upbringing, it seems like. So do you want to share a little bit about why you felt maybe your upbringing around money was a little different? That's why you saw money in a different way and had a different relationship with it?
Sure. Yeah, that's true. So I was thinking back, when did I first hear about it? And I think I was about 4. I went to the shops with my mother, and a neighbour's daughter was there. And I remember it was like a supermarket. And Jan sort of jumped up and down and said, I want that. And her mother bought it for her. So I thought I'd try the same. I want that. And I got a smack on the legs. Really stopped me in my tracks. And that's not a good experience. I remember feeling embarrassed even at that young age. But my mother said, no, that's not the way you get what you want. So you're making it clear. So my parents, my mother was extremely bright, but grew up in the Depression. So she was very careful with money, which I'm very thankful about. My father had a very successful business when she met him. So I saw him controlling the money. So he would pay all the staff and come home on a Thursday night and bring her cash for the housekeeping. But I always went to the bank with her to put a bit of money in the bank every week, as well as what she needed to buy, clothes for us and beautiful food. She was a great cook. And, there was always plenty of money in the sense, my dad would come home with a lot of cash. I remember seeing it lying around. And but it was never like we needed anything. Mum sort of taught us that you just, for Christmas, birthdays and whatever, you get one present, but it's a very good present. It might have been the bike. So it wasn't a lot of material things, but it was quality. So, and cut your material according to your cloth. That was her thing. Dad was much more, like, we've got to get a swimming pool and I want to buy Michelle a pony, this kind of thing. But Mum was always the one that was more frugal, for sure. And when my parents split up, and my dad, unfortunately, really lost it when I was about 12 or 13, like the business pressure and other things going on in his personal life meant that when my brother was starting to act out, he essentially, was very angry, and it wasn't the first time he was angry. He drank too much, and it was always the business was, he had to relax with alcohol. But anyway, to cut it short, we came back from a weekend away, my mother and I and my brother, and he changed the locks on the door, which was a beautiful home we lived in. And my mother turned to me and she said, "Don't worry, God will look after us." So that was a bit like, she was so clear. And so I didn't feel frightened at all. And I was at a private school. And to this day, my peers do not know that I went to live in an apartment. Mum had saved that little bit of money, and then she went and got a job straight away. She'd never worked her whole marriage. So I saw this woman totally bounce back. I mean, Dad even came and took the company car. I mean, he was really awful at that point. And, thankfully, things resolved with him after the marriage broke up, but not with my mother, unfortunately. But I saw this woman who had a strong faith really show resilience in every kind of way. And we were okay. And I was able to stay at the school. My father paid the school fees. And, it did influence me, because when I was growing up, I saw my mother find a block of land. My father would buy it. I heard about insurance policies. I knew there was investments here and there. I was given money every week to put in the bank, the school bank. My father would give me a £1 note, and I knew that this was important to save. And those things really meant a lot, you know, that I knew that you had to look after money. I also saw my mother give to people that would need it, a bit of robbing from, it was a bit of a Robin Hood, unfortunately, but taking from, yeah, I think his business ran by that, but, you know, I'm not judging him. But, yeah, I saw Mum, and although there was a disconnect and it was conflicted, I knew that we had to look after money, and I knew that there was a way of making money. And then when I met my husband, we'll talk about that next. But, you know, yeah, I realised that you have to take responsibility when it comes to money.
Well, you know, what's so interesting is I'm hearing the story of how, you know, the family started out doing relatively well financially, and then this break happens where the man leaves. And
Yes.
so the woman is left in some ways kind of like financially abandoned, right?
Yes.
And so it's amazing that your mother had a natural resiliency to her, and she just made up her mind immediately from the moment she noticed the door was locked and the keys, the locks had been changed. She just made up her mind that we're going to be fine. She had a beautiful faith that really kept her really grounded, it seems. And she just made that decision, that quick decision, we're going to figure something else out.
She believed in it. My mother believed in herself.
Yes.
And when she did get a property settlement, we went to a lawyer, I remember that, and the lawyer wanted to get her the company and the big house and everything, because she's got the children. And she said, no. That's more important to my husband than me. I'm not sure she made, you know, exactly the right decision, but she did get a house. She said, I need a roof over my head. You know, we need to buy a house. So she bought one and she renovated it, and then she sold it. She was, yes, and then she bought another one, and she was really, you know, yeah. Anyway, that's my mother, and she's 96 and still doing well, and I'm in charge of her, you know, bank accounts. But she'll ring me now and say, now about my money, how much is in there now? She's pretty amazing, really. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, what seems so amazing is that it seems like she was in many ways learning from her husband over those years.
Yes.
She became very savvy about how money worked, so that when this situation happened, she already had a bit of an idea that
Yeah.
really assisted her, on top of the fact that she was a very faithful woman and also very resilient and very much someone who wasn't going to be taken down just because the man disappeared. That's I think rare with women
Yeah.
in that time period.
Oh, exactly. I mean, there was no, you know, there was no counselling. You know, I mean, she was pretty amazing. And I'm not saying it was easy. It was really a difficult time. She was on her own for 5 years. She met my stepfather. It was a much better match.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lovely marriage. But you know, Mum's pretty, you know, believes in herself and believes in obviously God, higher power, and that, you know, there's enough.
Yes.
And she's always felt that, you know, we're to share. And, you know, people were amazing. I remember, because we didn't have any clothes. We were really out without anything. And we went to live with relatives for about 6 weeks. And then, you know, someone would drop a coat off or whatever. And as I say, she saved this little bit of money, but she got herself a job at as a doctor's receptionist. And before she married, she was a manager. So, I mean, it wasn't like she didn't know, but her whole married life, she never needed to worry about money. And Dad was very extravagant and, you know, always new cars and all of that. So, yeah.
Well, you know, it reminds me of how they say that the mothers are the first teachers. And so it's amazing that, you know, having that wise mother who really had a grasp on money, this concept of money, and how to respect it and have a good relationship with it, really actually was in some ways your indirect teacher that really assisted you to naturally develop skills so that you could then actually now work with women and money. So
And it's why I think I'm so compassionate. big about it too, that, it's like, right, we have to collectively learn some things, because otherwise we'll pass this down to our children. And then we're sort of generationally, doing the same thing. Because these days women have the opportunity. We have the money because we've been working. We can learn to invest and look after ourselves, others, over time. And it's about staging your life in some ways, because when you're on that, accumulating your wealth, your money, it's hard to perhaps give as much or whatever, but it changes over time.
Yes, beautiful. Well, let's get into the story around your first marriage, and what happened there when it came to money and marriage.
Well, I think, I've told you a little bit about the conflict at home. So I was the child that didn't like conflict. So by the time the marriage broke after 17 years, we really hadn't had an argument. So that tells you how unhealthy this marriage was, in the sense that I'd built up a lot of anger by then. And when it came to money, I was more the saver. I didn't take as many risks. My husband was more the entrepreneur, and he was anxious about getting money for the family. And so he was more driven and borrowed. And then, and did I ever sit with him and say, this is making me anxious? No, I just went along with this. And we renovated our first house, and, I worked 3 jobs to help pay the mortgage. And he was a social worker at that time, but he'd always invested in property. He was left a little bit of money when he was in his teens, and really learned about real estate. So we bought our first house, and my father my wedding present was really to help us put money into that house and renovate. And then my ex-husband said, now we're going to sell it. And I was devastated, because no, Dad's just helped us. But that was the kind of disconnect with he and I. And next thing we find ourselves on 5 acres of land. That's what he wanted, up in the hills area behind Melbourne in Australia, in Victoria. And I grew to love that rural community. But 2 years later, we lost everything in a brush fire. So we stood there in the ashes, and which was devastating, because we lost 30 people in the immediate community, and we lost our church, and it was tragedy. Well, that really was. But thankfully, my mother and my stepfather had a little holiday house at that point, and their house wasn't burnt down, and they lived not far from us. So they said, and of course we had 3 children then, under about 4 at that point, no, under 5. They moved out to their holiday house and let us move into their house. Wasn't that amazing? So for my children, we could have, the cutlery. They knew Nana's house, Nana and Papa. So, that was, and I could stay, and I got highly involved in the community and set up a daycare centre for the other mothers. And it was amazing. I loved being part of the rebuilding of that community, because we're setting up a school and at the same time, and it was amazing. But my ex-husband 2 years later didn't want to live there. And again, I did not want to move. And I said to him, look, I really love it here. I had a part-time job. I could take Jairus, who was only 2, with me. And it was just working so hard, because I was job sharing with another teacher to run this service. And I ended up moving again. And then we got into more debt. And he got his parents to buy in with us, which, I said we can't do that, but we did. And then I set up a business to really earn the cash flow. And it was just work. And at one point we had 5 little properties. We were renovating on the weekends. So eventually the marriage really broke down. After 17 years, we didn't communicate well. We didn't talk about why he's at anxiety and my anxiety, because money is a number one cause of divorce. It just is. And he and I, so just a really interesting part of this was, so I went to a lawyer, and of course he said, well, you've got the children, you know, Steve hasn't, and at this point he was seeing them every Thursday and every second weekend, and you're entitled to 70% because your father put in this much. And well, anyway, cut a long story short, Steve got very angry, and I'd sort of never seen the overt anger with him. It was more he'd go quiet. But so I sat him down. He was picking up the children. I said, look, you know, what's wrong? And he said, he was devastated about the marriage, of course, but never thought we'd ever split up. And he said, well, I don't think it's fair. I think it should be half each. And I sat there and I said, I agree. I think it should be 50-50. And I believed in myself, you see. Meanwhile, I kept my qualifications up. I had my own business. I had to pay him out of my business. But then again, he'd help me build that business in lots of ways. So I'd help him with the properties. And we were just such a good partnership in that sense, but we weren't in that intimacy, the financial intimacy, the intimacy of marriage and communication. But we had 3 adorable children. And I have to say, the fact I made that choice has been such a wonderful choice, because he and I are still very connected. We have 4 grandchildren now. He is back in Australia, and he's always sort of supported my career, and he really enjoys Pete, my husband, and, you know, I enjoy his wife, and it all worked out, because when the children were in college, you know, he paid more of those fees that might come up, or, you know, it all worked out. And I think we haven't got the angst at all that men and money is just a whole other topic.
Yeah,
and the lawyers really fuel this, unfortunately. I notice in America it's so aggressive, so divisive, and who suffers but the children? And our children see us still functioning as a family. And I believe if I'd have said, no, I'm sticking to, you know, what legally I should have, it would have been awful. It just would have been awful for my soul, let alone his and the children. So that was a very big lesson. So that's pretty much the money and divorce story.
So it must be interesting when you're doing coaching with women to bring up this topic, especially if they're going through divorce and they're still emotionally maybe very angry at their, you know, husband
Yeah.
or whatever, that they really want to take him to the cleaner, so to speak. And yes, it really takes a toll on the future of that co-parenting, especially if there's children involved. So it's amazing that at that time you had the wisdom to say, let's make this more equitable so that we will continue having a amiable co-parenting relationship. And eventually y'all are still good friends, which is amazing.
It is, and I won't say it wasn't painful, you know, many times, because the children because he took his half and ended up making a lot of money. And so he could buy the house with the swimming pool and next to the school, and you know, huge, I give them, you know, things I couldn't. I took my half, and I certainly did invest it well, but it wasn't, that's not what drives me. But it was always, but it all worked out, and it really has worked out beautifully, and I think it taught me that it isn't about the money. Here I am, a money coach, but you know, of course we have to look after ourselves, but having good relationships, resolving conflict, if we'd have been able to do that in the marriage, perhaps we'd still be together. But, you know, neither of us were mature enough to know, or conscious enough to know how to do that.
Yes. Well, given all that you've gone through from the time you were young, when your father locked you and your brother and your mother out of the house, to having your house burned down and losing everything, to now. Clearly, there's definitely a way that money and stress interact with health. So what has that journey been for you?
Well, I think I definitely was processing my feelings before the divorce and after the divorce. But when you've grown up and lost that connection with what you feel, when like you're always concerned about everybody else's emotional well-being, I believe a lot of the residue was turned in to my health. And there was another situation that arose, and I'm not going to go into that, but where I got incredibly angry. And it wasn't to do with obviously with my ex-husband, and but I worked through that. But and I believe I turned that anger in, and I got breast cancer when I was 45. And at that point, I'd sold my business because I ran that for 9 years, and I invested the money from that because, I built that business up from nothing. And I was now entering the corporate area and trying to prove my worth, that I could take on that project. I remember thinking, when am I ever going to get any sleep? It was way, way too much because I was seconded to a different department. I still had my job and whatever. And so I went through the whole of the, lumpectomy, the chemotherapy, the radiotherapy, and a lot of, I processed a lot of the feelings, and I, was successful in that job. It's why I'm over here, because it won a whole lot of awards, the work I did. I was at a university, and 6 years later, I ended up, moving into another job, a head of HR and diversity at a finance company, one of Australia's big publicly listed banks. But that work I did about policies won awards, and that's why I was speaking overseas. So, but my health, I felt like I still didn't know how to balance it, if that makes sense. That feminine filter was really affecting me. And, it's all very well saying I recognized it in the women, but I recognized it in myself. And so that journey was much harder because moving overseas for a VP job, and then right at the peak of the GFC, and then that job ended up evaporating. And then I got another job, which gave me more, what would you call it? I was senior VP, but I was working remotely. It gave me a little bit more balance, but I was managing global teams all around the world. So there was, it's like I was on the phone at, midnight to some countries. And, I was still, it wasn't until I really lost that job that I climbed down. That's the way I would describe it, where I really began to go within. And as I lost my identity as the VP, the mother, I'm over here, the daughter, mum's over there, and all these roles, and the masks that we wear was slowly being peeled off until it was just little old me in a country where I didn't know anybody. I knew Peter, but he's a pilot. He was flying internationally. I was on my own. It was really only me and the hummingbird outside the window. And it was really when I was looking at a notice board at our local church, looking for, what can I do? And this is right at the peak of the GFC. I was applying for jobs. I just couldn't get them. And a woman came up to me and she said, "Have you ever heard of contemplative prayer?" And I said, "No." No. And then and she asked me to it. And then I'm sort of registering, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, I think that's where they meditated. And I am not a meditator. This is not what I do. I cannot switch my brain off. I am totally into the overload and always trying to fix it and work it out. Type A personality. Anyway, I ended up going one Tuesday night, another Tuesday night, the first year, the second year, the third year. It took me a long time to peel back those inner layers where I could find this really beautiful peace and God within, this other part of me. And so then I meet people like you. I meet my whole tribe. I was never that corporate person, in the sense I was always trying to fix up what was broke, the policies, I was always wanting to look after the people in the organizations. So it's been a wonderful journey, and I'm much more aligned to my purpose now. And the people I coach are the people that are meant to come to me.
Yeah.
And now I talk about balance and really what the work-family integration is about at that deeper level. And so it's been very worthwhile.
Well, it sounds like that beautiful journey that you took, even though there was moments that were incredibly difficult and emotionally devastating, that it got you to this place to go inward through that contemplative prayer, meditation, to really begin to really see a deeper truth, so that you could really, really align to that higher purpose that now truly, fulfills you in a way that doesn't harm your health, and also really helps women who may be going through some aspect of the journey that you've already gone through. So there's a wisdom that you hold that you can share that really helps women on that path. It's so amazing. I keep seeing this over and over again, even with myself and with other clients and friends that I know, that our journey is so much a part of how we eventually are being called to serve and help others, is because we went through such difficult times that really awoke in us something deeper, and where we're willing to listen and then take all that wisdom and then now be willing to share it. I see that beautiful journey over and over again with women, but it's interesting that this journey around money and how I feel now it's becoming more critical than in the past, that we as women have to really wake up to what is our relationship with money now? What is our deeper purpose? And will us fulfilling our deeper purpose, will that be what really helps us feel that we're really alive and that we're really doing something that gives back? And is it really all about being at the top of the top in the corporate world, or making a certain amount of money, or is it really fulfilling that heart purpose, but understanding that money is an important part of it, right? It's like a partner that we need to know how to work with.
Exactly. And at the moment, women are on track in 2020 to control $72 trillion worth of finance, 40% of wealth. Now that sounds crazy when we've been so far behind. The responsibility with that, of what we could do with that, is enormous. It's not something to be shy about. I'll just give you an example. A girlfriend of mine who just went for a government tender here in Los Angeles spoke to me last week, and she said, oh my goodness, I only one of 4 that could get this tender. And she said, it's worth $8 million. And she said, I'm going to have to check myself into hospital if I win it, win the tender. And I said, why? What you do, no one else. It's to do with security guards. I mean, this is her gift. It's so much her gift. And it's like, why? I can see what she's thinking. I don't know how to do it. She does know how to do it. She's got a successful business. She does know how to ramp up. But of course the fear gets in, and then we can't live our purpose because what she does is something very integral. She's a very honest person. So why can't women run good businesses? And why can't we invest in companies that are looking at climate change and the environment and things that we believe in? You know, this is really important. So it's not a time to shy away from money. It's a time to be educated about it, to understand it and know how to invest well, and so that we can teach our children.
Yes, exactly. Because I do feel that, well, I read a statistic, and it was probably about 15 years ago, that based on the natural characteristics that women have, just we as women, our natural characteristics, we actually have a better, or maybe better is not the word, we have a proclivity towards business that surpasses that of the masculine in general.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We don't take the risks. You know, we tend to grow things more organically or frugally and then build it up. I know that's what I did with my business. My ex-husband was saying, well, now you can reproduce this everywhere. Now, because I did a master's in the business and eco faculty, perhaps I could, you know, scale it up. Of course, I know how to do that. But at that time, I didn't know how to control quality. I thought I'd lose the quality if I increased it. But why can't women have quality and grow their business? Of course they can. You know, you're right. So in down times, we're much more secure financially than the men will be. Boom and bust, you know. Not all of them, but, you know, some of them have learned not to do that, but they're much more science of the brain, neuroscience. Look at the herd mentality when it comes to the stock market. I tend to sit there with my investments and think, well, it's going to go up again. I can wait, you know. And I couldn't do what I do now if I didn't, you know, have things invested in Australia and have some passive income so I can do my non-profit work, because I'm on 2 non-profit boards raising money for one in Uganda, and we got a letter last week. It's just unbelievably joy for me to get this from some teachers we funded, and during COVID over there, they weren't getting funded. And it honestly, it's just so beautiful that people care. You know, so it's lovely at this stage in my life to be able to do that.
And it's interesting that, you know, I think every soul is called to at some point want to give back and serve. And wouldn't it be wonderful if from the time our children were young, we had enough education and conscious savvy around relationship with money to be able to then pass that on and teach that to our children, so that eventually when they become adults, they can really create beautiful service in the world that really gives back. And I do feel that that's the movement that we are going towards. I really feel that that's kind of the pull for all of us as a collective over time. And I feel that's why this whole awakening around money and women and our relationship to it, and how, you know, we struggle with it and what to do with it, because, you know, in some ways it's still kind of new to me, women, to be able to, like, well, what do I do with this thing called money?
It's a whole education piece, and that's all it is. It's just learning about it and learning, you know, to be careful, or what there's a lot of different products on the market, you know, but a good financial advisor, and I don't do that part. I triage to people that I trust and that can do the advice. I might do budgeting or cash flow or those kind of things. But with the money coaching, and I'll just spend a couple of minutes on that, it is about learning your archetype. It isn't the only coaching that goes back to when you're about 5 years old, because those messages you learned from your family and those beliefs you learned about money will repeat over and over and over. So you really need to, for me, interrupt those patterns, or, you know, help women see what the pattern is, and then with small but significant steps, help them transition And it's a transformation process, and there's often a lot of healing involved too, like the work you do. A lot of pain and a grief about things like money, because of the grandfather had it and he lost it, and now, you know, we were so poor or whatever, you know, and so there's a lot of forgiveness and shame needs to be dealt with, but it is about the next generation for sure, as well as us.
Yes. And what I find to be really beautiful, especially as a mother, because I have a 16-year-old, and so for me, when I sit with looking at the journey that I've had around money and my family and all of that, which you know about because we spent hours talking about my story, which will be will have to be just a whole other Zoom call because there's not enough time for that. But one thing that I realized that for me as a mother, there's legacies that we as mothers want to leave to our children, or that we want to leave to society. So maybe we don't have children, but we want to leave something. And so I was just sitting with this and thinking, okay, so, you know, I've gotten to a certain place and I know I can continue growing and developing my skills with money. But the legacy that I would like to leave my daughter is an even higher level of skill with this thing called money, where she feels comfortable with it, where she feels, you know, empowered. That's really the word I kept hearing, like empowered with this thing called money. And that money, I've always told my clients when they're struggling with it, money is a servant. And I mean that in a good way. Money is a tool, I believe, created by divine to serve in the world. It's here, it's a tool, it's to serve. It's not here to have power over us. It's not here to be our master. It's here for us to be its loving master and allow it to serve through us. And so for me, I sat with that for a while, and I was thinking that would be part of a financial legacy I would want to leave my daughter, is this empowered relationship with money, that she sees her mother empowered around money versus like completely in chaos and not knowing, you know, which way's up and down when it comes to money. And I feel like that's one of the gifts that we can give, especially to our children. And then, of course, again, if we don't have children, giving that back to society in some way through the conscious way that we interact and be with money. But it is a relationship that needs healing. It's really interesting because I see money as almost like a lover, and it needs to be, sometimes it's not treated well. And so I was told by a business coach years ago, you know, how you treat your money would be, you know, think of it as like a lover. Would you treat your lover that way? Would you treat someone you deeply love? Would you treat them that way? And that was a really big eye opener for me about, whoa, yeah, look at that. Look at how I'm treating money. That's interesting. So that was one of those first moments when I had to pause and look at how I treat this thing called money. It really is a relationship.
That's right. And I mean, we can't survive without it. These days we gather in soup, you know, at Sprouts or Whole Foods. We're gathering and then we hunt in, well, my husband hunts at, what is it called, that tool place, buying tools, or, you know, we're hunter-gatherers. It's different now. And we've got a huge responsibility in terms of the stuff. And women often will work and think to compensate, we buy more material things. That's not what our children need. We'd be better off teaching them about money and getting educated ourselves than buying them more stuff. I've always felt, you know, it's the value when you are with your children is being present with them, being really there with them, not so much the quantity of time, but really listening to their emotional needs and being able to guide and the wisdom that you can impart and how you can teach them, essentially, because the woman has a huge role in that. But, you know, yeah, it is about a relationship with money, and it should not be full of fear and depressing and immobilizing and overwhelming. All these things that women think, I don't want to know about it. Well, hello, you really do need to take some responsibility and know about it and be educated in it. And when we look at the archetypes, some women might be the martyr. They're always fixing up, the children, always giving it to the children. And that's not a good thing. They need to be able to look after themselves, put the oxygen mask on you first before you're giving it away. It's a whole huge area, but yeah, very worthwhile.
Well, I know on your website at conscious.money, you have a money quiz that people can take. So I'm gonna is it www.conscious.money?
Money. That's it.
And then people can go there and actually take that quiz.
And then I can answer. I'll answer them and talk about their money type, whether it's something to worry about or not.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes it's good. They're doing well. Some other times it's like I could give you so many stories about who I've coached and things that how they've the transformation. But are we just going to do the hour tonight?
Yeah, I just wanted to open it up for maybe about 5 minutes or so for questions. So let's see if anybody, based on anything that Michelle has shared tonight, is there any questions that anyone wants to type into the chat? Or if you don't mind opening up your mic, if you want to share your voice and ask a question to Michelle, you can do that as well. About anything that she shared about her story, any question that's coming up right now around money or as a parent, that you would like to share, ask, or around her coaching process and how she works with clients. So if there's any questions like that, I want to just give us some time to field those. Okay, so there's a question here. What are the most common archetypes you see in your clients? What are the most common archetypes you see in your clients, Michelle?
For women, the innocent, which is the one I don't want to know about it. Someone else will look after that, and the martyr, where they're fixing it up. And with the martyr, they can get very resentful because underneath it, they are thinking, what about me? But those are the most common. There's 8 archetypes. So I don't see the fool so much. You need a little bit of fool to take some risks, but it's more men that I've coached that I can think of one that he's just a gambler. It may not be at the horses or with the casinos, but he's a gambler when it comes to when he gets money from maybe stock trading or whatever. He's soon lost it again. Getting involved with a woman that really has taken his money, what seems really ridiculous and painful to me. He's got very high fool archetype, but mainly the martyr and the innocent. The warrior, which is the one that really knows how to invest or knows how to save, and every archetype has a shadow side. So the warrior is more inclined not to ask for help or think they know it all. And so, there's 8 archetypes, but definitely the innocent is the high. That and the martyr are the 2 that I see more with women.
That's really innocent, because if you look at, just the innocent, the way that we as women are programmed, right? To just be sweet and kind and nice and innocent, because that's what a good woman is supposed to be. And
that's a feminine filter. Do it all, look good and be nice.
Yeah, exactly. And then the martyr, it's like, that's the job of the woman, to be the martyr, and sacrifices. That makes a lot of sense, that those would be the most common archetypes you see when you work with women.
And I think the victim is something I see sometimes too, where I just share this one person I was coaching about money, and she, when I went through her bio, her history, her father had died when she was about 8 or 9. And there was a lot of hurt and pain about that, because her mother's side of the family was very wealthy. Her father's side wasn't, but they were really quite more entrepreneurial and quite ingenious, but there was a lot of anger about the mother's side, which are a very well-known family, not fixing up when he passed away. It was interesting. They didn't help at all. It was really the fathers that looked after the children after school. The mother had to go and work, and but she was angry, and she had a lot of victim. And that was really, it was presenting at work, it was presenting with the managers she worked for, and it was always blaming somebody else. So going through the process, we dealt with her real feelings, the real pain and hurt about the loss of her father. Because often with children, we think they don't know, they're too young to understand. And she was really, a lot of grief was there. And anyway, she's completely changed. She's not in the corporate area, and she's now, she's really on track with her own finances and not got any of that victim.
Yes.
Anyway.
Well, you know what I find so interesting? I usually tell my clients, all doors lead to Rome, meaning that wherever your struggle is, whether it's money, whether it's your career, whether it's relationships, usually by walking through that door and beginning to face that particular struggle that's really difficult for you, whichever door that is, whether it's the money door, whatever door it is, it really is that door which will invite you into a deeper healing of really core wounds in your life that will actually shift many areas of your life. So it sounds like from just doing money coaching with some of these women, their whole lives have changed on many levels, not just with money. Does that seem?
Oh, that's so true. And I think of one woman that a financial advisor rang me, and she had a portfolio of $3 million. She's from San Francisco, but he was so worried. It was bleeding. Like, where is this money going? And she was, older than me, and he was worried about her, for the next chapter of her life. And when I did the money coaching, it was a lot about this grief that her second husband, they rented out an apartment overseas as well as in San Francisco. And anyway, in a very short time, because the process is very good, in 4 weeks, she could see exactly what was going on. And she had some high warrior there, but she hadn't actualized it for a long time, because she was going through this grief, and he passed away. Anyway, the long and short was, when we looked at what her skill set was, she's now teaching. She's moved into a place. She's got shut down those other 2 apartments. She was part owner to a little place near where her brother lived, and now she's the local teacher. She's in the music area, and she's amazing. And that's why she was over in Europe. That's how she ever knew about Europe, because she'd studied at one of the big conservatoriums over there. But I suppose what I did was really help her get in touch with where her talent was. And look, because she was worried, and she was still paying some college fees for her adult children that were way able to do that. So I've coached her through the difficult conversations. I often do that about legacy, the will, those kind of things, because it's hard when you've got to face that with parents or an ex-husband or whatever. They need to be empowered, and so those are the kind of conversations we have.
Yes.
And we rehearse, we role play.
So it sounds like you start off with a 4-week process that you walk them through as part of the conscious coaching, and then go from there. So after this 4 weeks, they're in a much better and clearer place around their patterns with money. Is that kind of?
Yes, they can see it all. It's all very much done on a grid, and they can see exactly where the influences are coming from. And it's really an enlightened process. And then, changing behavior, as I say, there's significant but small steps to change that. And when we're under stress, we may default to the other, but it's very quick to then think, oh my goodness, there I go. Yeah. I've gone off and bought things I don't really need. The fools popped in, but really no, I'm back on track. You know, where's Michelle? They'll ring me and say, Michelle, I need to talk to you. You know, so yeah, it's a wonderful process because it's much more than just the money. It's really about their talent and their purpose and making sure that they're really, because as I say, it's so fulfilling compared to my life in the corporate area when I hear the feedback from, you know, these people in Uganda or other women or my coach, the things that people I've coached, it just thrills my heart that they're living their purpose.
Yes, because you're now living yours.
Yes, because I'm living mine, and I've got time to put that, to give them. It's very important.
Oh, that's beautiful. I want to ask one last time, is there any other questions that anybody here has for Michelle? You can go to her site, conscious.money, and take the money quiz, and also learn more about her 4-week process if you want to learn more about that. I know that I'm going to definitely be having Michelle on again, maybe for a half-day class or something. We're going to be discussing that further. So if this is something that might be of interest to any of you, please let me know, because I would love to continue these beautiful, amazing learning conversations with Michelle, including maybe offering some type of a money class on a particular topic that is of interest. So if there are certain topics of interest, so Michelle, we've talked about a couple of possible topics that have been very common with your clients, such as money and divorce, money and children. What are some other
money and relationships? Money and relationships, you know, with your partner, that's really important. It could be your business partner, it could be your spouse, you know, whatever. That's really important. That's a whole topic. Money and children's really important. You know, I think too, money with the elderly, you know, as I say, I'm controlling mums from here and her well-being. I'm really the primary caregiver, and I live 7,000 miles away. So you know, there's a lot with the aging population. So you know, we talked about some different topics, but it's what everyone may want to hear. The other thing is, I think women in their own business feel like they can't charge their services. And that is not what the men do. You know, that was asked at the last presentation I gave. They said, you know, how come we feel a bit guilty about asking to be paid for our expertise? And I mean, that's not a healthy. It's not a healthy attitude. You may barter something occasionally, but you know, mainly it is about being, you know, paid for your worth and you know what you can contribute, your value essentially. And because women don't negotiate from their you know, their first job like men do, we end up with, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars less because we never all the way through. So I help women with negotiation as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. But yeah, I find that to be really common, how we don't believe we're enough. So we don't put ourselves in that value. And so then it's hard for us to then ask for that value because we're not aligned with it. You know, just from an energetic standpoint, when I'm working with a client who's maybe stepping into offering, doing a new offering, let's say in their small business, they're like, well, I don't know, how much should I charge for this? You know, it's like, and it's so interesting because, you know, what they have to offer is very valuable. But when we test the energy of the alignment between the amount and what their offering is really worth, sometimes it's completely off. So, for example, there's, you know, someone who wants to offer something that really helps clients move forward in the field of, let's say, organizing their home. And so they know that what they have to offer is very unique. It's a very unique process that they use with their client that really helps them change very quickly in one day. So that's valuable. Women need that.
Yes.
And so here's a client who's saying, okay, I don't know, $65. And I'm like, no. Let's sit with this some more. And it's really interesting because when you really look at like, what would I pay for a quality service like that? And then I'll share a certain number, like, that looks like it's somewhere between $300 and $500 or $600 for a service like that. And they'll be like, what?
Yes.
And they're completely off, like their energy can't actually receive what that service is worth. So the
Mm.
vibration's over here at 65, but
Yes.
really the truth of what they're offering is over here around 600, and they're completely
Yeah.
off, and they're not aligned. And so even though they will throw out there, okay, I'm going to charge 600, no one will pay it because their energy is not aligned to it. They're not ready to receive it. So it's
Mm.
interesting about having to work even deeper with where do you believe you aren't valuing yourself enough to actually receive that for your
Mm.
services. So then digging, just like you have to dig with your clients, like digging and digging and digging. Where is this I'm not enough? Where is this I'm not worthy of being paid this? Where do I believe I'm not an expert at this? Where do I believe I don't deserve that amount? So, digging all of that out so that finally, at some point, they're able to click in with the appropriate, pricing or rate for that service. But sometimes it's quite a journey to get there. I just know my own journey from I started out offering what I do for $5 way back 10 years ago, including free many times, until eventually I had to work energetically with myself to finally be in a place where I could align myself to a higher value than obviously $5. But that was quite a journey of digging up all this sludge that was in the way of me really valuing myself. And I
Yeah.
think that we always could work in that area. I know that I still have more areas where I need to work around that. And so it's really interesting. I'm guessing you probably have this digging you have to do with clients as well around
Yeah.
aligning to being enough.
Because when it comes to a gift, and your gift and my gift, we think that, oh, everyone has that gift. It's not true. That's what I said to my friend, my colleague. No one else does what you do. The way you do it. It's yeah. It's totally, we don't see our unique beauty and value that, so that we can claim. Obviously sometimes we have to compromise, and that's fine, but overall we need to have our plan. It's a business. This is my business, you've got your business, other people. And it's things like people having a cleaning lady. If their gift is something else, going and walking in corporate life and being the CEO, for goodness sake, pay for the cleaning lady and the person to come in and do what you're talking about and everything else, because you need to focus on what you do well. Why would you spend your time? Or if you need an accountant, let them do the bookwork, so you don't have to keep track of taxes in 2 countries. Let them do that so I can do my coaching. It is about, it's about having, it's not about having everything, but it's about being rewarded for what you do and your gift.
Yes.
It may not be as much,
Mm-hmm.
but do you know what I mean? Money, but that's why we do it well.
Yes.
And that's what, because we've let go of some things.
Yes, absolutely. Because this whole idea that we have to do it all, that feminine filter of we've got to do it, that has got to go.
Yeah.
Because that actually blocks us from really doing that
What we
one
need to.
amazing thing that changes the world for people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful. Well, oh my gosh, Michelle, thank you so much for all your wisdom. Thank you for sharing your beautiful story of the ups and downs and the resilience that created the amazing financial guru that you are. And I hope to definitely have you on again. And I hope everyone will go and check out your conscious.money. And we're going to send this out as a replay because I know there's many other women who really need to hear this information to just really help us go into this curiosity. Like where am I on my journey with money? And where would I need support, and where am I willing to now look at that and face it? Because as you said, the whole thing with money, there's a whole lot of energy around shame and everything else around that. So I just want to kind of close our call today with just a beautiful intention, prayerful intention, that all those who watch this video or all those who have had struggle with money, we're just going to ask that they all be blessed to be able to see clearly those areas where they truly are needing support and help. So I'm just asking that divine source bless every single person that is here on this call tonight, all those who will watch this replay, that you will all be deeply blessed, that the divine will open up those beautiful spiritual eyes of yours for you to see that you are worthy, that you are enough, and that it is appropriate for you to value yourself in your work, whether you work for someone else or whether you work for yourself. Just opening up and letting go of those old patterns of shame around your relationship with money so that you can begin a new journey out of shame, a new journey of liberation and freedom with money so that you can really live that purposeful life that has meaning and lightness and joy and happiness. So I just ask for that blessing for all of you. I ask for that blessing for you, Michelle, and all of the beautiful clients that you serve as well. And I just ask that we all be blessed as we move forward into the rest of this year and into 2021. I know that many people right now are struggling around the finances and financial concerns at this moment because of what's going on in the world. So I just want to send out lots of love and blessings on all of those people right now, all over the world, who are in this moment struggling financially, that they be blessed, that they know that divine is divine supply, and that divine supply is there when we open our hearts to receive, and that if we are being called to serve in some way to assist, that we listen to that calling. And so with that, I just seal everyone in love and light, saying thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you, Michelle, for your beautiful service in the world, and that you heard that beautiful, purposeful calling to work with women and money. And with that, I just seal us all in so much love, so much light, asking for divine, beautiful, abundant blessings for everyone, saying thank you, thank you, thank you. It is done, it is done, it is done. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you, Linda. You're such a, bless you, yeah, these lovely women that know you, that's great. I'm so thrilled to know you and you for you to give me this opportunity. Thank you. I'm so pleased. Thank you, Martine and Jay. I can see some names.
Yes.
Thank you very much for being on the call.
Stacy, and then others who I know are going to be on the replay. Thank you all for being here and holding the love and the light. And I just keep envisioning women being the top of the top and being the top money makers eventually. So that by the time my daughter is an adult or my granddaughters are adults, the top money makers in the world will be women.
And they will influence some really wonderful things.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Miss Michelle. Blessings to everyone. And I hope to have you back again for more magic with money.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Blessings. Have a beautiful evening.